Yes, racism exists in various forms across the Middle East, as it does in many regions of the world. The dynamics of racism in the Middle East are complex and influenced by historical, ethnic, religious, and socio-political factors. Below are some of the main forms of racism or ethnic prejudice that can be found in the region. Arab versus non-Arab. Arab identity is often privileged in many Middle Eastern countries, and there can be discrimination against non-Arabs. For example, people of Persian, Kurdish, Turkish, or African descent may face marginalization in some Arab-majority countries. Kurdish discrimination. In countries like Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and Iran, Kurds have faced systemic discrimination, exclusion from political and economic power, and in some cases, violent repression. In Iraq and Syria, Kurds have sought greater autonomy, and in Turkey, Kurdish cultural and linguistic rights have been a point of contention. Migrant workers. In Gulf countries such as Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, there is widespread use of migrant labor, especially from South and Southeast Asia, as well as from African countries. Many African migrant workers face harsh working conditions, racism, and exploitation, and are often treated as second-class citizens. African refugees and immigrants. African migrants, particularly those from countries like Sudan, Ethiopia, and Somalia, often face discrimination and stigmatization in countries across the Middle East. They are sometimes perceived as inferior and may be excluded from certain job opportunities or face mistreatment by authorities or the general public. Sunni versus Shia religious discrimination, particularly between Sunni and Shia Muslims, is a significant issue in some Middle Eastern countries, such as Iraq, Bahrain, and Yemen. This sectarian divide has fueled conflict and division in various parts of the region. Christian and Jewish minorities. In some parts of the Middle East, Christian communities, especially in places like Egypt, Iraq, and Syria, face discrimination or violence. The situation for Jews is also precarious in many Arab countries, where anti-Semitic sentiments persist. Bedouins and other indigenous groups, such as the Druze, Circassians, and Assyrians, sometimes face discrimination or marginalization in various Middle Eastern countries. In some cases, Bedouins are seen as less modern and face socio-economic disadvantages. Although not necessarily racial in the traditional sense, gender-based discrimination is pervasive in many Middle Eastern countries. Women often face legal and social obstacles that limit their rights and opportunities. The situation varies from country to country, with some nations like Saudi Arabia and Iran having strict interpretations of religious law that control women's behavior, dress, and freedoms. In certain countries, Palestinian Arabs face discrimination, especially in Lebanon and Jordan. Although Palestinians make up a large portion of the population in Jordan, they have historically faced exclusion from certain political and economic rights. In Lebanon, Palestinians live in refugee camps and are often restricted from certain professions. Skin color and racism, colorism, discrimination based on skin color, also exists in some parts of the Middle East, with lighter skin often seen as more desirable. This can lead to prejudice against individuals with darker skin, particularly among certain groups such as South Asians, Ethiopians, and other Black Africans. Social stratification, often linked to ethnicity and nationality, can lead to prejudice. For instance, people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, including refugees or displaced people, can be subjected to racialized treatment based on their perceived lower status. Colonial history has also influenced racial attitudes in the region. The legacy of European colonialism left behind complex power structures, hierarchies, and divisions between ethnic and racial groups, and in some cases, these dynamics continue to shape how people view each other today. While the forms and manifestations of racism in the Middle East may differ from what is seen in the West, there are many examples of ethnic, racial, and religious discrimination that affect people's daily lives and opportunities in the region. Like many parts of the world, efforts toward greater equality, tolerance, and understanding continue to evolve, but deep-seated prejudices often remain a challenge.